Hi, welcome again to engvid.com. My name's Adam. Today we're going to look at something that I get asked about all the time. Sorry about that, I lost my cap there. Okay, so students ask me all the time, what's the difference between though, although, and even though, and despite and in spite of? Very simple. It's not as complicated as everybody thinks. First, let's start with these three. These three, though, although, and even though, these are used with adverb clauses. Now, just to refresh your memory, what is a clause? A clause is any group of words that has a subject and a verb. It must have a subject and a verb. And these three are used to show contrast. So what does all this mean in general? You're going to have a long sentence. This sentence is going to have two clauses. One clause will have this adverb marker in it. The other clause will be an independent clause, means it's a sentence that can stand by itself. What this does is it shows a contrast or something that's very different from one clause to the other clause. So within that one sentence, you have contrasting ideas like positive and negative, or you think this is going to happen, but really that happens, something very different from what you expect, okay? Despite and in spite of, these are prepositions. And they are used with a phrase. Now, what is a phrase? A phrase is also a group of words, but it doesn't need to have a subject and a verb. It can have a noun, or it can have a verb, or it can have neither. But usually it has at least one, or a gerund, but we'll get to that. But it also shows contrast. Okay, before I give you some example sentences to understand all this, let's look at each one separately. Though and although, what is the difference? No difference. Though is just a little bit more informal, okay? You can use either one at the beginning of a sentence or middle of a sentence. The biggest difference is that you can end a sentence with though. You can't really end a sentence with although. And again, when you end a sentence with though, it's a very informal sentence. Okay, so you have to keep that in mind. So informal. Now, that doesn't mean that this is formal. It just means that this is informal, if that makes any sense. How about even though? Even though also shows a contrast, but it's a much stronger contrast. It adds emphasis. But what is the emphasis on? Okay, this is what is important. What is the emphasis placed on? The expectation. So for example, the beginning of the sentence has one idea, so you think this must be the second part, but no, something very different is the second part. And this is a very strong emphasis on this expectation. Okay, when I give you some example sentences, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Despite and in spite of, these are exactly the same, except one word, three words for this one, right? But they work the exact same way. You can interchange them. One mistake that many people do, they say in despite of, or despite of something. They mix them. Be very careful. Despite your phrase, in spite of your phrase. Don't mix the two up. They're two different things with the same meaning, okay? This will be much clearer once I put up some examples, so let's do that. Okay, let's start with although, though, and even though. I have basically the same sentence, 4 different ways, okay? Although the exam was difficult, I think I did well. Now, here the contrast is between difficult and doing well, right? That's the contrast. Difficult means doing badly, but here's an opposite. Okay, very easy. I start with although. I'll give you the opposite. Here's your subject, and here's your verb. And then here's your subject, and here's your verb again. We won't talk about the extra clause at the end there. That's your main one. Now, same sentence, I can switch it around. I can say, I think I did well, although the exam was difficult. Beginning, end, doesn't matter. The only difference would be the comma. If you put this as the second clause, no comma. If you begin the sentence with the adverb marker, you have a comma. I think I did well, though the exam was difficult. Okay? Yeah, so that's my mistake there. Sorry about that. Here we have it in the second part. I could put although here. I could put though here. Both would be okay. Doesn't change the meaning of the sentence. One is just informal, one is just regular. No problem. Here, what I did is I wanted to show you how to put it at the end. So I split up the sentence into two. The exam was difficult. Period. Sentence is finished. I think I did well though. Now here I put a comma when I put though at the end. Now again, this is informal. This is how people speak. Sometimes you can have it in writing, but not in formal writing. But you see how I can put this at the end? I can't put although here. That doesn't work. You have to use the though at the end of the sentence in informal situations. Now, here I changed the sentence a little bit. Even though the exam was easy, I failed. Now, what's the difference here? The exam was difficult. I think I did well. So there is a contrast, but it's not very strong contrast, right? Here, the exam was easy. So if I hear the exam was easy, I expect that you did very well, right? That's the whole idea. But I failed. That's drastic. Drastic. It means that it's a completely different result than what I expected. That's why I'm using the even though. Even though it was easy, I failed. This should not happen after this, right? So the difference is so strong from the expectation that you want to use even though to emphasize that, excuse me, that difference. Okay? I hope everybody understands that more or less they're the exact same. In most situations, you can use any one of the three. It won't make that much of a difference. This one has a certain feeling to it of a strong difference. So when you're writing an essay, for example, sometimes it will make a difference even though or although, but usually not. Okay? Let's look at despite, in spite of. Okay, now let's look at despite and in spite of. So first of all, despite his best efforts, the man just couldn't succeed. Sorry, I forgot to put a little period there at the end. Okay, now first of all, what does it mean? It means he tried his best. He tried and tried and tried, but always failed, could never succeed. Now, what do you notice about this sentence? Here, there's no verb, right? It's only a phrase. This is what we call a phrase. Here you have your regular independent clause with your subject and your verb. No problem. In spite of his best efforts, the man just couldn't succeed. Exactly the same meaning, okay? Just one expression versus the other. Again, I can change it around. The man just couldn't succeed despite his best efforts. The man just couldn't succeed in spite of his best efforts. Same meaning. Another way we can use despite and in spite of is with a gerund, an ing verb. This is called a gerund. It's an ing verb, but we use it like a noun. So here the phrase is being on time. To the lecture, not so important. So despite being on time means although he was on time, see I can mix them up, it's the exact same meaning, we were not admitted. We were not allowed inside. So keep in mind, despite and in spite of mean the same as although, but despite and in spite of we use with a phrase, although we use with a clause. Otherwise, same meaning. Okay? If you're not sure and you still have some questions, please go to ingvid.com. There's a quiz there. You can try all these things out and ask your questions. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Thanks.